should anybody out there, what's the difference between you and everybody else that's on this panel? I mean, what makes you different than anybody else, and why should they vote for you? Michela, Alioto-Pier.
Thank you, Phil. We do sound very similar at times, and I think tonight we sound very similar. But I think that the truth of the matter is that really when you get down to it, especially for those of us who have served in elected office before, we do have track records that are very different. And I think part of this campaign is going to be to show people how those
So how are you different from the rest? What's your track record different?
So, you know, I'm trying to, it's very difficult in that, how do I compare myself to David Chiu? How do I compare myself to Bevan Dufty or John or Dennis Herrera? You know, I spent 7 years on the Board of Supervisors focused primarily on job growth and job opportunity issues. I had gone up against Chris Daly on a number of different things, from the anti-demolition ordinance to all sorts of stuff. And you spent a good amount of time fighting for things like the biotech payroll tax exemption. I'm glad that people are talking about payroll tax exemption. I was the first person to do it, and I did it. I worked very hard to draft that thing 6 years ago. At the time, it was extremely controversial. I went up against a very progressive Board of Supervisors, was able to get members of the progressive side of the board to go along and to give us a shot and to try. And I think that when you have served in office, a lot of what differentiates us is not only what we stand for and what we talk about, but the way that we accomplish things. You know, we've had a lot of differences. City Attorney Herrera and I both worked on the Peakers project, for example, in Morant. And my view was that we could close down Morant without building combustion turbine engines. His view was that we were going to have a hard time doing that. I think that our track record is different, and the way that we go about doing things is different. And these forums just give you a very small glimpse of who we are, and ultimately we're going to have to get that information out a little stronger.
Okay, Phil, Ting, here's your shot. What makes you different than everybody? Where do you differentiate from anybody else?
Absolutely great. I think that's a great question, Phil. I'm a department head that runs a civil service department. I took over one of the worst departments in San Francisco. It's probably considered the worst assessor's department in the state. We're on our way to making it the best. We've delivered results. We've delivered actual money that went to the bank, that went to people's salaries, that went to budgets. And that takes a lot of hard work to actually reform a civil service system, working hand in hand with the workers, not against the workers. 80% of the folks that are there today were there when I walked in the door. So what made it so awful that the same people were there 6 years ago, but they're still here today? Because there's a lack of accountability, there was no transparency, and there was poor management. And I think if we take that style of accountability, transparency, and openness, and all, as well as fiscal discipline and management, I think you're going to see results at Munich. You'll see results at Rector Park. You're going to see results in building a plan.
Are you saying the other candidates don't have them?
I'm just telling you what I have, Phil. You can ask them what they don't have.
Well, that's what we were asking you. It's what makes you different. So
I've run a civil service department. I think I'm
Dennis Herrera, what makes you different? Why should they vote for you as opposed to anybody else here?
Okay. First, I think that everybody out here should put us through a lens of, because I don't think this race is about the next 4 or 8 years. I think that this race is about the choices we make in this election are going to determine where San Francisco is in the next 75 or 100 years. So everybody, you need to look at us through a lens that says, does this individual have a vision to assure that San Francisco can be a model for what a 21st century American city needs to be? And does this person have a track record of accomplishment that demonstrates that they know how to use the power of government to get things done? There's not a lot of city departments that have a national reputation for excellence. I'm proud of the fact that the San Francisco City Attorney's Office has that reputation. I manage an office of 350 people, a $65 million budget, and if you're in the legal community, you know that when you say you work for the San Francisco City Attorney, people stand up and take notice. And that's because of our track record of using the power of the law to make a difference in people's lives each and every day, on issues of national significance to the most local. Marriage equality, choice, local, shutting down the Morant power plant, gang injunctions, going after credit card arbitration mills that are defrauding Californians, going after payday lenders, suing the state to outlaw gender rating, which required women to pay 39% more for their purchase of individual health insurance policies than men, uncovering fraud, waste, and abuse at San Francisco Unified School District, including nationwide scams that were defrauding school districts nationwide. I could go on, but I will tell you this. There is no job that prepares you better to be mayor of this city than being the city attorney, both on the substance, because you have to get results, but politically as well. Because I am the lawyer for everybody in city government. Every elected official, every city department, agency, and commission rely on the work that we do to get what they do. And that is why I'm different from the other candidates.
Is there anything, as far as issues that you feel different? Is there anything that you've heard tonight, or anything that you disagree with, or that you don't, or you want a different take on?
Well, I think that the take is talking about the vision and the record of accomplishment, Phil, and that's really what this is all about, because you sort of led the question by saying you all sound like you're going down the same road, and you haven't heard a heck of a lot of disagreement on the issues, on the questions that you raised. But it comes down to having that record of accomplishment that shows that you can implement all these things that we've been talking about. And based on my record, I think that it qualifies me.
Okay. Joanna, Rees?
I am different. So I'm an entrepreneur and a leader. I'm coming to this in an incredibly purpose-driven way. As I said, I spent 2 years out in the community, really listening to the community. And what I kept hearing loud and clear was the system as it's currently working isn't getting us there. We have long-term systemic challenges, whether that's in public education, whether that's in job retention, whether that's in openness in our government, that we absolutely need a new approach. That's what entrepreneurs do. They figure out new approaches, they bring in a lot of collective opinions and perspectives on things, and they do more than anyone thinks is possible with less than anyone thinks is possible. And then as a leader, leaders take action when it becomes obvious to do so. From the world that I'm coming from, if you don't take action, you just don't exist anymore. You can't talk about things and not do them. And leaders set a vision, then they bring on the right talent. I know from teaching leadership at Santa Clara University, as well as working with so many leaders, you're only as good as your team, so it's about really getting the right team, and then putting the right structure in place for accountability and reward. And that's what I'm good at, and that's what I look forward to bringing.
The weakest candidate in the world can tell you why they're great and the great things they're going to do when they get elected. And so all I would ask, and I would challenge those of you who've not made up your mind, this is a big city and a small town. Ask 5 people if they've ever worked with Bevan or done something with him, and I'll live or die on that.
To echo a little bit of what Bevan said, I think it's easy for us as elected officials and mayoral candidates to stake out positions and to talk about what we're going to do. But as the president of your board of supervisors, ultimately it is up to me to hammer out the consensus to actually get things done. So for example, we'll all talk about the need to create jobs, but I help to sponsor and make sure that companies like Twitter and 21st centuries like Zynga and Yelp actually stay here in San Francisco. When Larry Ellison threatened last year to take the America's Cup from San Francisco, I worked with then Gavin Newsom to hammer out the deal to make sure that we are the site of the America's Cup. Everyone's going to talk about the need to create housing, but when environmentalists brought up issues with the Hunters Point project, I hammered out the deal to get that done. When tenant advocates raised issues around the Park Merced project, I hammered out those details to get that done. Everyone's going to talk about fiscal discipline. I'm the one candidate here sitting here who's been at the center of budget negotiations over the last couple of years, helping to make sure that we're cutting close to $1.4 billion from our current budget, making sure that we're doing budget reform. We all have records, but I have actually delivered on the types of things that we all say that we need to do for San Francisco.
Okay. I think that's pretty much it. You guys have saved it.